think we got that. Yes. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Jomo Stewart here at the Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation. It is Tuesday, April 1st, but this is not a joke. We have Energy for All Alaska Task Force meeting. Before we begin, I just want to make a couple of quick announcements. So the very first thing, for the good of the order, here to my left, we have Mr. Ian Winarski. He is the newest project manager here at Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation. Just started last week. So when Lisa left, we were advertising for a new project manager. Remember, she got poached by the chancellor up at the university. So I used Indeed, and right at the top of the list was a young lad from Virginia who went to Virginia Tech, just graduated. And though we normally would try to find someone, in concentric circles, someone from Fairbanks, someone from the interior, someone from Alaska, as a fellow skinny kid from Virginia who went to Virginia Tech, and has managed to make a life for himself at the far northern edge of the civilized world, I figure that should be no bar to hiring a kid with a background in strategic studies and foreign affairs, with a little bit of bent of wanting to learn about the military and energy. So as we move forward, you can expect to be hearing a bit more from Mr. Winarski, because I'm going to go ahead and make him our Energy Project Manager plus plus. Also for the good of the order, FEDC has a lot of good, big things running right now for which we would really love your assistance. The first one of the biggest ones, is we are assisting the borough in updating its comprehensive economic development strategy. Many of you will have gotten contacts relative to the roundtables. We'll also be doing surveys. So if you see that invitation and you can attend either physically or online, please do. If in follow-up you end up getting a survey, please do fill it out. Again, this is a very important document that helps guide not just economic development in our work here at FEDC, but frankly, funding. So if you can go ahead and take the time to do that. We also are doing our annual economic analysis, for which we're also running a big survey. And so if you get that in your inbox, I hope you will please respond. We've done business confidence surveys before, but this particular year, we're trying to get a better handle on the exposure of our business community to what is happening on the federal level. This is not a comment on politics, but the reality is 70 cents of every dollar that pings around this economy originates in government. A big chunk of it is federal. The military represents a third of our economy. And so between the two, and in fact, if you look at the revenue forecast for the state of Alaska, federal spending is in fact the largest contributor to the state budget. So again, just want to be able to wrap our heads around and our arms around the level of exposure our business community feels or has relative to some of the things that are going on at the federal level. So please do respond. All right, without further ado, I will turn the floor over. We have as our guest President Million. I also see Ms. Bradish here to give us a GVEA update, because they have been very, very much in the news and a lot of exciting things happening. So without further ado, President Million, nice to have you.
Thank you, Jomo. So just to give you a quick heads up of kind of some of the topics we're going to touch on today, we're going to start off with some on-bill financing, since that's the latest breaking news that's been reported on and talked about within our area. We're going to talk on the Interior Economic Growth Fund, touch on some legislative priorities, our federal funding with PACE and New Era and others, a little bit on our generation mix with our controlled load shed program that was talked about at the very top of the year, a little bit on our rate case. So with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to Ashley to touch on the on-bill financing and some on the Interior Economic Growth Fund.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Good morning, everybody. So as Travis said, our on-bill financing pilot program called Reduce has made it into the news miner. We announced it a little bit earlier this month. But this is really kind of a long-awaited program that was really member-led by our member advisory committee several years ago. And so they reduced or they researched on-bill financing programs throughout the country to kind of give a direction to our board and our staff on how a program like this might work. And then staff kind of dove in and finally got our pilot program off the ground earlier this month. And so essentially what this is financing for purchasing new appliances or upgrades. Oh, thank you, Joma. Or upgrades to make your residents more energy efficient. So some of the social media chatter that we have seen since this was announced is that this is a financing program that will pay your electric bill. And I just want to dispel that rumor. It's not to pay your electric bill. It's actually to purchase these things or these upgrades to reduce your energy costs. So that might be your electric bill, that might be your fuel bill, but things like weatherization, energy efficient appliances, things like that. So the initial amount for the pilot program is $200,000. So members can apply for a minimum of $500 and a maximum of $10,000, and then they would pay that back over time with their electric bill. The intent is really to see kind of how this pilot program works and the interest that we have from members. We have received a handful of applications, and then eventually, if it is deemed successful, if we have a lot of interest and the program seems to work well for members, and then administratively as well for GVEA, then we would make that a permanent program and file with the Regulatory Commission of Alaska to actually put it on your bill. So this pilot program is not technically on bill, but that is the intent, and hopefully we get to that point. It's on a first come, first served basis, really until those $200,000 are fully depleted. And I will mention that those funds are from non-operating costs, so they don't have any impact on member bills.
Actually,
And then we're also,
if I may, Ms. Bradish, now is an excellent time to go ahead and remind the group this is for the good of the order. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, we are monitoring the chat, and I'm also monitoring the participant list looking for hands. But again, you can go ahead and throw up your hand or simply take yourself off mute and fire away with questions. If I may start the festivities. So I see energy efficient appliances. Again, the first thing that comes to mind would be a new stove, a new dishwasher, perhaps a new refrigerator. But can this be used for heating appliances?
yes, it can. Heat pumps specifically are not eligible at this time for the pilot program. The primary reason for that was that with our maximum of 10,000, our engineers did a lot of research, and the cost of a heat pump system would really be above or right at that 10,000. And so that's the reason why the heat pumps wouldn't be eligible at this time. But who's to say in the future for a permanent program?
Okay. All right. Again, if you have any questions, everybody, go ahead and fire away. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Jomo. And just quickly moving on to Interior Economic Growth Fund. And I know we're going to talk about a lot of things today. I don't think we've met with this group or presented to this group since September of last year. So a lot has happened since then. And so we want to just be able to cover a lot with you, but just want to quickly touch on the Interior Economic Growth Fund. This fund, it's really the program that it's through is through the Rural Economic Development Loan and Grant Program, and that's administered through USDA's Rural Business Cooperative Service. So it back in 2011, the Fairbanks Co-op market actually approached GVEA about this program, and it's designed to support rural areas by providing grants and loans to electric cooperatives, and other qualified entities, really to spur economic development. So back in 2011, when we were approached by them, we applied and got those funds. And those were given to the Fairbanks Community Co-op market to start the market. And so since that time, those funds have been fully repaid. And so we partnered actually with FEDC to really leverage the economic development expertise that you all have to help us get this stood up and administer the program and vet those applications and make recommendations to our board, who ultimately decides how those funds are allocated. So we opened this back in September, had a good number of applications, and at the end of last year, 3 awards were given, and that totaled $335,000. Right now, those funds are being finalized to be dispersed, and we're going to get with FEDC here very quickly to determine when we can open up the next round of applications for those remaining funds. And the idea is it's a revolving loan, right? So, or a revolving program. So the idea is that every year we would open up the applications to disperse funds that have been paid back through the prior year. Any questions on the Economic Growth Fund?
Okay. Also, actually, I moved a little too fast. We did have a couple of questions relative to the appliance on-bill financing program, the Reduce program. And then I do see that Rich Seifert, Doc, has taken himself off of mute. Since we're on the subject, Rich, why don't you go ahead?
Well, I just wanted to endorse this plan. I just checked in here, and I heard the discussion of the Department of Ag loans, and I was a board member, an original creator of the co-op market, and I wanted to say that first of all, we were good stewards of the money. We paid it back, but that actually is a terrific loan program, and I think we thanked GVEA several times, but I'd be willing to thank them again. And one of the 3 this year is going to be giving us a new point of sale market program. I'm no longer on the board. I'm just an advocacy citizen here, but GVEA was the only one who could do this in the community because they were the only USDA connected nonprofit, not-for-profit in the interior, and they did it. So it was very helpful, and we're in their debt. So thanks for doing that, and couldn't say enough good about this growth program. It's a very good idea, and it's revolving, and money stays in the community. Everything about what's good about cooperative economic development is embodied in that. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Richard. And that's a really good endorsement. Again, it's not free money. But again, the ability to give low interest loans, certainly we found it out big time relative to the IGU. And that, the power of a reduced interest rate, cheaper cost of money can help advance really good things. So glad to hear you say that, Rich. So the questions we have relative to the Reduce program, you had mentioned non-operating funds, and what exactly did you mean by that?
Yeah, Joe, I'll go ahead and hit that one. So, obviously your operating funds are, what people pay for their electric bill. So whatever their usage is, they pay that amount back to the utility, and those are what we classify as operating funds. Our non-operating funds, there's a number of different revenue streams that comes from. It could be interest earned on investments. One of them that's a primary thing is we are participants in other cooperatives, such as we participate in a bank cooperative and a few others. And just like Golden Valley does or REI or anything like that, you'll get a capital credit back. And so those capital credits coming back to Golden Valley would be considered a non-operating income or non-operating revenues. So those are the funds that are being used to stand up this program.
Okay. We have another question in the chat, but Mike, your hand's up.
Yes, I was disappointed to hear that heat pumps were not included. And the reason I say that is because the so-called wood stove changeout program, which I think will allow up to $6,000 grant, you could put those two programs, your on-bill financing and the grant from the borough, and really, I think, help improve not only people's electric bill or heating bill, rather, but clean up the air at the same time. We've got what I call here the Valley of 10,000 Smokes, and we could reduce that to just a few if we could avail our latest technology on keeping warm. I hope you'll revisit that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. And like I said, it's just our pilot program at this point in time. And since we do have relatively limited funds, that's kind of the main reason why at this point in time heat pumps were left out, just to be able to allow as many people to benefit from these limited funds as we can for the pilot. But I don't think they will be discounted from the discussion when we hopefully eventually make this a permanent program.
And to piggyback a little bit on that, after the pilot program is done with and we deem it successful or not, if we were to move forward with a full rolled out program, much like we were talking about with the Interior Economic Growth Fund, this would be funding that comes from the USDA through the Rural Utility Services at a very low interest, below market value interest rates that then we could turn around and loan out to our members. So that would then open the door to a much bigger pot of money than that $300,000 or $200,000 pilot program, so that heat pumps and things like that could be looked at to be utilized.
Yeah.
A feasibility demonstration.
Yes.
I will say this, as recently as 2 years ago, heat pumps, frankly, the technology wasn't quite there yet. However, we did have a FEDC board meeting over at NREL recently, where they were testing some heat pumps, and the technology we're getting there. So I may do another presentation on heat pumps with NREL relative to their results. I see Mayor Matherly has his hand up, but if you don't mind, Jim, since we're on the subject of the again reduce program, we have a question regarding the mechanics. I'm not sure if I missed this, but would the loans be repaid as part of a member's bill, or would they be in addition to the bill, or is it kind of the same, an add-on?
Sure. So for this pilot program, the members who participate would get a separate bill to repay that financing. That's because in order to put anything on members' bills, we have to get approval from the Regulatory Commission of Alaska. And so that would be the intent. If we were to move forward with a permanent program, we would file with the RCA in order to do that. So for this pilot program specifically, it's not technically on your actual electric bill. You would get a separate bill to repay that.
On the upside, though, again, it removes the question of clarity, or any, undue accusation that you're trying to hide something, because again, it will be a separate bill, so you get to see clearly, what you're paying back and how much on a month-on-month basis. Sure,
absolutely. And if it were to be on your bill, it would be clearly delineated there as well.
As a line item. Okay, we did have, Mayor Matherly, was that your question?
No, my question was actually, I missed the date of the actual dates of this when she was talking about it. So if you could just clarify again when that is.
Jim, are you talking about the Interior Economic Growth Fund or reduce?
The pilot program.
Pilot program, applications are open now and they will be open until those funds are depleted. So, it's, first come, first served basis.
Do you have a thought on when it would be depleted?
I really don't. You know, there's, the applications, there is some legwork for the members to do in order to submit an application. You have to go get a quote for any appliances or purchases or work to be done from a contractor.
Gotcha.
And so it's hard to say. We've gotten so far, I think 3 applications so far. So yeah, I wouldn't want to give you a time frame. I would say if you're interested in it, go ahead and put in your application when you can.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. All right, thanks, Ash. Appreciate it.
Good thing.
All right, thank you. I think that goes to our questions for now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Travis then to get on our legislative priorities.
Yeah, so the board of directors in January selected a number of legislative priorities going into this legislative session. And to remind everybody at this point in time, there were no pre-bill filings for any of these topics. They were just topics that the board had determined that were of the highest priorities going into this session, if bills were filed or not. The first one, obviously, we've talked about this a number of times, Jomo, in this forum, was the rail belt transmission, part of the GRIP funding that was awarded last year for $206.5 million to build redundant transmission, basically from the Kenai Peninsula all the way up into to Healy, to get redundancy from Fairbanks all the way down to Homer. Obviously, the funding that was issued at first was just to come off the Kenai Peninsula over to Beluga, kind of in the Anchorage Bowl area. And that's what the funding source was secured for. And we were working on additional funding sources to get the transmission line the rest of the way from Anchorage up to Healy. So that's still ongoing at this point in time. I can tell you that the matching funds that have been put in by either the utilities through the Bradley Lake project or through the state of Alaska should get us through about 2027 for the work that we're doing on that. But there's going to be some big spends coming up in the near future. So we're still working on securing the rest of the funding for that, for the match, as well as the funding to get the second part of that transmission line done. So the second priority that
Actually, sir, just to be clear, again, just to be clear, so we have the funds in place to take it to Beluga or to Anchorage, but we do not have the funds to get it from Anchorage up to Healy.
That is correct, and that is one of our major priorities right now that we're working through. There may be other revenue streams or sources that we're evaluating right now on how to get the funding to get it the rest of the way, because you know,
No, Mr. President, you don't have to get yourself in trouble. This is part of my long-running umbrage that, you know, yeah, our southern friends get taken care of, and then we have to figure it out.
Well, I can tell you that the interior delegation, as well as Golden Valley, is banging on that drum that it has to make its way up to Fairbanks. I can tell you that there's at least one other utility in the South Central area that also is beating on that drum with us. So we're not totally on an island by ourselves.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, I got a lateral. I got a natural gas lateral on my list too. All right.
Hey, what do you know? Priority number 2 was regarding natural gas and the natural gas pipeline discussions. And, you know, obviously shortly after session started, HB 119 by Representative Stapp was issued. And immediately after that was issued, Golden Valley submitted a letter of support for both the for that one and the Senate bill that was issued in a companion bill at the same time. I know at that point in time, also the Alaska Power Association has also submitted letters of support. I know IGU and others have as well. So that is something we're keeping our eye on and continuously supporting any effort toward a natural gas pipeline, especially with the need for a spur to Fairbanks. Yeah.
I see that Dr. Seifert has taken himself off mute again. Rich?
Yeah, about natural gas. I learned something very recently that I found shocking and really troubling. I'm on the construction committee at the Fairbanks Memorial Hospital Foundation, and I was told that natural gas now, they're off natural gas. They have the option to use both natural gas and oil. And they're off natural gas now because natural gas is actually more expensive than oil. I was shocked to find this out. Can you comment on that? Or can anybody here comment on that? I'd like to know more about why.
I was just gonna see if anybody else wanted to jump in first. I could just tell you that based on, some evaluation we had done a while back, looking at potentially utilizing the truck natural gas that IGU is bringing down comparative to fossil fuels that we get right off the pipeline. Our understanding is the major cost driver was the transportation of that natural gas. It really wasn't the natural gas itself, but the transportation factor to get it from the North Slope into Fairbanks. And that was the major driver of that increased cost of that natural gas, maybe even comparative to diesel fuel. I'm not sure from a home heating or a business heating standpoint, what that break even or difference is. I know more from the power generation side.
Mike Kraft.
Oh, thank you, Joe Mo. Good morning, Travis. Hey, good quick question on this gas pipeline, and obviously the associated equipment that would have to go along with it in order to take advantage of it for Golden Valley, i.e. generators, gas generators and that such. Do you have any idea, best case scenario, when that might be an option for Fairbanks? Are we talking a decade, or are we talking any idea at all?
Mike, the only thing I could reference is the Wood Mackenzie study that was put out earlier this fall on kind of what their timeline was looking. If I remember correctly, it was like 2030, 2031 they were talking, but that was before the actual FEED study gets completed. So I would say at this point in time, your best guess is my best guess on what that would actually do for time frame.
Is Golden Valley currently looking at what kind of options you might have in order to use a resource like that in our community, and where that generation might be placed?
Yeah, we're looking at a number of different options. Part of that is a integrated resource plan to determine where the best location and what type of generation would best suit and be most economical for our membership. But I can tell you right now, if magic wand were to be woven, and we had a gas pipeline here today, a number of our existing generation fleet could be converted over fairly easily to burn natural gas as opposed to liquid fossil fuels that we burn today.
You're speaking about the LM6000s, that type of stuff in North Pole?
Yeah, the LM6000s, you can do it with the frame 5s and frame 7s. They're just an older piece of equipment, so I probably wouldn't recommend doing that, but they're normally a gas turbine unit anyhow.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that information. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. So priority number 3, some of you guys have probably heard about this, the Dixon Diversion Project. This is a Bradley Lake project that the Alaska Energy Authority is heading up. And essentially what that is to divert a stream that comes off of a high mountain glacier near the Bradley Lake project, building a tunnel and a pipeline to route that water into the existing reservoir, raising the dam somewhere between 7 and 21 feet. That's still to be determined at this point in time. But essentially that would allow for an additional 50% energy out of that project. And that is the lowest cost energy on the entire rail belt at this point in time. So obviously we support anything that can bring on additional low cost renewable hydro generation into the portfolio, in which Golden Valley is a 16.9% share owner of that project. The next one was on net metering, which we expected something to be dropped, which was recently dropped by the governor under SB 150. That's a bill that we really felt wasn't needed as much because it's already handled by the Regulatory Commission of Alaska for net metering regulations. This was a bill that was dropped, I think, last session as well. So it just got dropped. We're keeping an eye on it. You know, there's a number of things that come into it, but the biggest thing for us is it seemed to create duplicative work, both from a legislative standpoint and a regulatory standpoint, and it's already being addressed in the Regulatory Commission of Alaska. So we felt from Golden Valley standpoint that it should remain there and shouldn't have to have legislation in addition to. So any changes that needed to be made or would want to be made under net metering could be done through the regulatory process already. The next one, item number 5 for us, was a renewable portfolio standard. Again, when the board had set these as priorities, or, you know, none of these bills had been released yet. And so the general take was, you know, as long as there weren't penalties for our utility, and it was cost effective, you know, we could support something of a RPS at a very high level. Now that 2 bills have been dropped, HB 153 and Senate Bill 149 on the Senate side, now we are able to look more at what's actually in that legislation. Our board's admin committee is actually going to be meeting here in the near future to kind of really deep dive into that bill and figure out, you know, what direction, you know, what things we can support, what things that we don't necessarily agree with, so that we can go forward to the legislature on that. So that's in the process right now on, now that those bills are freshly dropped, what position and how we're going to take that. And lastly, item number 6 under legislative priorities was electric utility liability. That one has been introduced a number of times. That has to do with the utilities liability for vegetation outside of the right of way or outside of our legal means to clear, and just defining where the utilities liability would lie for vegetation that resides inside the right of way versus outside the right of way. At this point in time, I don't foresee any legislation dropping on that, at least this year. I know from the statewide association, we're kind of keeping an eye on Idaho, and I think there was one other state that had some legislation very similar to what we had tried to get across the line the last couple legislative sessions, and seeing how those shook out before we introduced anything. So from a legislative standpoint, those were the 6 priorities that the Golden Valley Board had set going into this session.
Certainly, as heavy as this snow is, it's a timely discussion.
Yeah.
At least
I see that
it's not a legislative.
Yeah, and I see that there is a question, Mike Music, you'd asked about the bill numbers for the RPS, and so that would be House Bill 153, which was sponsored by Representative Holland, and Senate Bill 149, which was by Senator Wielechowski.
Yeah, Bill will. Dr. Seifert, I see your hand is up.
I have another question about the discussion of utility liability. That sort of is what happens if you drop a tree on somebody's land or whatever, or they drop a tree on you. I know you said it's no longer going, but I'd like to look into that because I'd love to help GVEA clear the lines. I think we got a huge liability there. That's, if we could work out some way for incentivizing people to clear bad trees, we'd be a lot better off for all of us. So what's the name of that bill? What number is the bill again? Even though it's not going.
There is no bill on that particular one. That was just a general support if a bill were to be introduced.
Okay, well, I'll work on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Richard. So any other questions on legislative priorities? And I'll move over to federal funding if not. Okay. All right, so a couple updates.
Actually, sir,
yes.
I do see my crafts hand shut up.
Perfect.
Thank you. With respect to this portfolio standard, is it likely that, say, for example, if there were a bunch of renewable energy projects put in the Cook Inlet region, and Golden Valley was buying power from those facilities, would Golden Valley be able to claim that on their portfolio as meeting some kind of a standard with respect to a portfolio, and vice versa if there was renewable energy available on Golden Valley's system to another utility? Is that something you guys have talked about?
Yeah, we definitely have, Mike, and that would be the case if there was a big enough project to where there was energy available for Golden Valley to purchase, say out of South Central, we could do so and claim that with the caveat, as long as the developer or the utility that owned the renewable project did not sell off the renewable energy credits to someone else. And that's something we're learning a little bit more about, at least in the state of Alaska, because there really is no renewable energy credit program or REC program at this point. But we did find out recently that if a developer were to sell the RECs not to the utility that's taking the energy, then the utility could not claim that as renewable energy. But that's really the only caveat with that one, Mike.
All righty, well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, let's turn to federal funding because that has been a question or a topic of concern.
Absolutely. So a couple things, PACE and New Era, which we've talked about a number of times, been in the news for some USDA funding both grant and loan programs that Golden Valley had been awarded. Come the first of the year with the new administration in place, both of those funds were put on a 90-day hold. So that hold is continuing until at least April 20th at this point in time. So we're still kind of working through that process to figure out what it's going to look like on the back end, if those funds will still go ahead or if they're going to be clawed back or what that's going to mean. But that doesn't mean that we've stopped work toward that. So in the process of these funds being on hold, we're still going through a number of studies that are required with a couple different developers. So that's interconnection studies to figure out what all infrastructure needs to be in place, both substations, transmission and whatnot to allow these projects to come on to the Golden Valley system, looking at different studies looking at what size of batteries or other generation we need on the system in order to regulate these type of renewable energy projects. So a bunch of studies are still going on in the background as these funds are on hold. So we're working through that process right now. I can tell you that we have at least one developer that has provided us the information we need to get these studies going. We're working right through that, and we're on pace to get most of those studies wrapped up here in the next couple months, so that we then, once those studies are completed and we know all the costs that go into it from Golden Valley side and as well as the developer side, we can actually figure out what that true cost of energy would be for our membership to determine whether it's an economic project to go forward with or not. So we're working through that process still. One of the things on the PACE side that came about shortly after the federal fundings were frozen was a company called Renewable IPP. We always called it the Nenana Solar Project because that's the location we were looking to locate the solar. They had 3 different projects going on in the state of Alaska, one down on the Kenai Peninsula called Little Puppy Dog Lake, one in the Mat-Su, which was an expansion of the Willow Solar Project down in the Mat-Su, and then ours as well in Nenana. Shortly after the announcement of the funding freeze came about, they lost their financial backer, and since then they have pulled out of all of those projects. So all 3 of those solar projects that were being looked at throughout the state have been pulled off the plate at this point in time. So I know that they're looking to find buyers or anybody that may want to take over those projects, but at this point in time, they're not going forward. So that did change a little bit on our front. The other,
Mr. President, if I may, again, you said that certain funds were on hold until at least April 20th for a couple of projects, and I just wanted to get clarity on what those projects were. Was one of them the BESS upgrade?
So we had under both the PACE and New Era a BESS component. So yes, in your question, yes, there was like on the New Era project, we were looking at new transmission, battery energy storage, debt refinancing for Healy 2, and then integration of renewables into the system. So that's one of them. That was kind of the project in a nutshell that's on hold. The PACE was that Nenana Solar project with battery and a few minor infrastructure upgrades as part of that as well. And that one's also on hold. So yeah, there was 2 different batteries we were looking at, and both of those are on hold.
was the Westinghouse thing still moving forward?
That is a perfect segue into the next one that I have. And so
I haven't
that
been
is
doing
a-
this too long.
So that one was actually a Department of Energy grant program for the long duration energy storage or pump thermal energy storage, interchangeable phrases that way. So that one was originally not on the chopping block or put on funding hold because it was already going through the process. Money had already been spent both from DOE and the various parties that are involved with that project. But just recently, as of I think it was Friday, maybe Thursday, a news article came out that specifically called out this project to be potentially on the president's chopping block. That's late breaking as of late last week, and I've actually got a meeting later today with Westinghouse to discuss this further. But I could tell you Westinghouse has already reached out to, and so has Golden Valley, to our federal delegation to let them know that, kind of the reasons why this was originally supported by them, why it's beneficial for Golden Valley, and to put it on their radar that this is something that could potentially be looked at as a project not needed to go forward, as they're putting funding freezes or cuts on there. So a lot more to come here in the near future, I'm sure, but that's what I know as of right now.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so
As
that's
always, guys, just a reminder, again, this is for our mutual benefit. And see, as soon as I say it, Dr. Davies.
Yeah, thank you, Travis. Appreciate the updates and stuff. I just wanted to go back a ways, and I was thinking about this transmission issue that we have. I want to excuse me, I want to preface this by saying the transmission line that comes from Anchorage to Fairbanks also goes from Fairbanks to Anchorage. So it should be not viewed as just a priority of us, but of all of the utilities in the rail belt. And with that as a preface, I was remembering that some time ago, former Senator Gene Terrio had led a project to evaluate the cost effectiveness of just building that line, and with going out into the market and getting the lowest rates that we could. And my recollection, this is a few years ago now, but my recollection was that line penciled out as a project just commercially. That is, if we went into the commercial market, got the loans, built the project. Have you dusted that study off at all and taken a look at that?
We haven't dusted that study off in a while. I know that is being looked at. Like you said, it is beneficial all the way up and down. I can tell you that I think it was February of 2024. Anchorage and the Matsu Valley was very happy that transmission line was put in place, because as they were running into natural gas shortages, we were, for the first time in forever, we were exporting power down to South Central to help support them. So yeah, you're spot on, John, on that. The power does flow both ways, and it could be beneficial for everybody. But yeah, that is something that probably should be looked at again from just a straight economic benefit, from a commercial standpoint of that transmission and redundant transmission, as opposed to not. So I appreciate you bringing that one up, because it hasn't been looked at least from my knowledge, in a couple of years.
I will say I did sometimes softening the beaches on this argument all last year, spring, summer, and into fall, when I would have meetings down in Anchorage. Again, that we've historically thought of this intertie as a south to north enterprise, but with the energy challenges they're having in the Cook Inlet, that in fact our utilities stepped up to be there to help avoid rolling brownouts and cold days, both IGU and our GVEA. So that should be something the Anchorage legislators could support for their own energy security. But okay, good question, John. I will say again, a couple of years ago, cost of money has changed pretty radically over the last couple of years. But yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And you'd mentioned rolling brownouts in Anchorage, and that brings us to our next topic, and that was our controlled load shed program that was talked about at the front of the year. I think early January we rolled that out. Can say as of right now, we're kind of through that danger zone, to where there was concerns of, not having enough generation online if we had a couple units go down for maintenance issues or whatnot that way. And with our load being higher in the winter months, we're through that. Our load has started coming down as weather starts warming up, other than outside today where it's snowing like crazy. But we're kind of through that, what we call our danger zone, or the area we were most concerned about. And just to point out as well, as when we rolled this out, right before we rolled out the program, we had been working with our large industrial loads who were more than willing to work with us to cut back their load so that it wouldn't impact residential members as much. We worked with the military, who would be willing to completely self-sustain during that point in time as well. So even though it was a very small percentage probability that we'd have to implement a program like that, we just wanted to be transparent, be out in front to say this is a possibility, just to make sure people were prepared. But the fact that we got through it, we didn't have to implement it whatsoever is a very good thing. But again, we wanted to be transparent on the front end, as opposed to playing catch up on the back end and getting mud in our face saying, well, we knew about this, but we didn't communicate it to our membership. So that was the intent of that program. But like I said, we're on the other end of that now. We are working with the other utilities to see if this is gonna be a potential problem for next year or not. I know that one of the biggest drivers was the transmission line coming off the Kenai Peninsula that brings the Bradley Lake power up into Anchorage and then further up into Fairbanks, was down for required maintenance that had to be done in the winter time. They're looking at some other options on how to try to take that line down outside of that, highest peak load time, both for Anchorage and for Fairbanks, so that we can try to avoid that. In addition, we've been working with the other utilities as well, to where if we truly got into a generation shortfall, we're gonna go to their aid and they're gonna come to our aid as well. So that helps bring down that probability of a program like this actually having to be implemented even more so. Any questions on that one before we move on to the last item?
Okay, I'm seeing none.
All right.
Just a quick comment, if
Oh,
I really appreciate you guys thinking through that, what that would look like, for one thing. And, renegotiating or dusting off your considerations with your the larger the mines and their requirements for power and being able to shed them first, all those kind of considerations. I think it was good that you did that. But I think it reminds us that we are really teetering on the edge of not having enough energy. So I don't think the crisis is over.
I would agree with you 100%, John. Okay, so the last topic we have is just to give everybody kind of an update on our rate case. So just to remind everybody, a rate case is typically done on a very regular basis every 5 to 7 years. It's been a little bit more than that for Golden Valley. I think this will be the 8th or 9th year since our last rate case. Some of the drivers with that is you typically try to have a standard, what you would define as a standard year of operation, for the data to be used going into a rate case, so that you don't have a really odd year that you're trying to pull those numbers into your rate case. We normally would have done it probably in about 2021, but you had COVID in 2020, the overlap of COVID in 2021. So loads were completely different, usage was different. And so it really wasn't a good representation of what we would call a normal operating year. So that's why it got pushed out to this year. We're going through that right now. There's a number of different things that go into a rate case. One is our cost of service study. And what that does is, I guess kind of a unique thing for us, or a really beneficial thing, is this is the first rate case we were going through where we have all the AMI data for this period of time. So we have a lot more granular, accurate data for each type of business class, both commercial and residential, so that we can get a really good picture of how much, average usage and things like that are being used in these different rate classes. So the cost of service study takes in, the account of what revenue do we bring in for, small commercial, GS1s, GS2s, residential. And then we can look and say, what are our expenses to serve a residential rate class or a large commercial rate class? And gives us a chance to look at it and say, okay, are we actually, making sure that these are balanced? So we're not doing cross subsidization that, the residential rate class is subsidizing industrial or vice versa, so that we can try to get as close to a balance as that we can. So that's part of the first step in the rate case study, is the cost of service study. Here coming up in the later summer, we'll be having public meetings kind of reviewing the results of these studies and this rate case, with ultimately input from the membership, looking at, the board's looking at a couple different things on optionality for bills. Is there other billing options or optionalities that we could provide to our membership on the bills, as opposed to just, you pay for your usage? Is there time of use that would make sense? Could there be peak demand? Could there be different rate designs that could benefit our members and give some more optionality? So we're evaluating a number of different options as we go through this process. The ultimate goal is that we would file our rate case at the end of the year with the Regulatory Commission of Alaska, and then it can take them up to about 15 months to review and issue a go, no go basically on our rate case at that point in time. So it's about a year-long process, actually a little bit longer than that, because we started this process back in October, November timeframe with the rate case, but we're working through that process now. There's going to be lots of opportunity for member input coming up this summer.
Okay, we do have a hand up for Mr. Mike Kraft.
Thank you, Jomo. Travis, on these commercial accounts, I'm wondering about the ratchet demand fee and the fact that Anchorage just raised theirs, I believe, to north of $40 a kilowatt. And I think ours is like 22 something right now here. Do you see, what do you see in the case of that? Is there going to be parity between Anchorage and Fairbanks on that ratchet demand fee, or are you guys thinking that it's going to stay where it's at? And I'm just wondering about the matrix of that capacity payment for commercial.
Yeah, great question on that, Mike. And at this point, we're still pretty early into the data collection. So the evaluation for that, and that's on the larger commercial and industrial for your demand charge, that hasn't really been fleshed out at this point in time. I mean, obviously we keep an eye on what Anchorage does, but our rate case is independent for Golden Valley specific. So if it comes back and says that, ours needs to go down, that's probably the recommendation we'd have. If it needs to go up, we'll determine what makes sense for Golden Valley system. But at this point, we haven't got any data back yet to indicate one way or the other where that may or may not go.
Okay, Mayor Matherly. And then I do have one question, because we're coming to the very top of the hour, but there is one more thing, and I hope that we can get at least a comment on it. So yes, Mayor Matherly.
Yeah. Hey, Travis, thank you for the questions and the presentation. What's the current membership size for Golden Valley? How many members total? How much has it gone up or down in the last couple of years? Just what's the trend, and how many are there currently? Just curious.
That's not good.
Yeah, it's about 36,000. It's stayed relatively steady, gone up very slightly year over year. The number of meters is close to 50,000. So, some members have multiple accounts with us, but yeah, the number of members themselves is hovering around 36, maybe 37.
And that seems to stay fairly flat. The number of meters have gone up,
Yeah.
A couple hundred a year is what we're seeing, but you can have a member with multiple meters, and that's why there's that discrepancy within, the city of Fairbanks will have a ton of meters, or the school district or others.
All right,
Actually,
cool. Thanks very much for that.
I have a triplex, and so at least for that one building, I have 4 meters, actually, if you count the utility room.
Yeah.
So the question I have, community solar. I saw the announcement relative to the solar demonstration project. Intriguing. Could we get a little information on that?
Sure. You want to hit on that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Jomo. So yeah, Travis recently did a podcast with Amanda Bird. I think it maybe aired on KUAC. But this is similar to on-bill financing, kind of a member-led effort. And essentially what we are looking at doing is taking our existing solar farm at Bidwell and turning that into a community solar project. So what that would mean is a member can purchase a panel. There's just over 1,700 panels. And then get the benefits of what that panel produces and have that be reflected on their bill. So the process right now that we have to, similar to on-bill financing, if it were to become a permanent project, is we would have to get approval from the RCA to get this program stood up. So the board has approved us to move forward on that. And so we're working on the filing now, and don't have an exact time frame on when it will be rolled out. It might be late summer. But it is something that we're working through right now.
So almost well, yeah, like again, you now have a solar panel, but it's being managed by your local co-op.
That's correct. Yeah, and the idea really is, there are certainly members that live in an area or their home is not great for solar. They may live in a location that doesn't get a lot of sun, or they may rent, and so they don't have the ability to put on panels, or just financially they're not able to put panels on their properties. So this is a way for them to be able to get those benefits.
Neat. Okay, actually, Mike, you had gone. Well, Mike, your hand was up first, so you go first.
I'm just curious about this community solar situation. It seems that, with the shortages of fuel and the Anchorage Bowl and some of the issues that we're facing here in Fairbanks with our aging generation capacity, doesn't it seem like it would make more sense to promote additional solar systems in Fairbanks as opposed to kind of buying into something that's already on the grid? And I'm just wondering if you guys have considered it like that maybe additional capacity might be an advantage for our community at this point, as opposed to, buying into a system that's already providing power. And I'm just curious if you guys have thought of it that way.
Well, it sounds like you guys were working on additional solar in a partnership. Right now, that's just on hold.
Yeah, that's correct. And kind of back to Mike's question, specifically to community solar, part of the way it was rolled out this way was to really engage and figure out how much engagement involvement our members would have with this. And if we get a lot of engagement, part of what the member advisory committee and the board moved forward was, if we have a big, participation with this, that we would then expand out and build additional solar to continue and expand the community solar project.
Well, then theoretically, with your purchasing power and economies of scale, you could probably get panels again at a cheaper rate than I as a homeowner.
Yeah, most likely.
I'd hope. Dr. Seifert?
Yeah, I do have my audio on. I'm worried about that. About this community solar idea, a group that I participate in has been talking about this, and I don't know how far along it is, but it seems to me that it'd be a whole lot better, a whole lot more interest if the individuals or a group, a cooperative group outside the utility would unite, and there is legislation to allow for this, because there's a 30% tax credit. Would selling off your system allow for somebody investing in it to take a tax credit, or is that not down the road that far? I'm just thinking about the economic incentives. To me, it's always seemed a better incentive if the individual would effectively, either cooperatively or individually, own the system and then take all the advantages of ownership.
Yeah, I really don't have a good answer for that one right now, Richard, but we can definitely look into that one. I don't know if it would qualify because of how long ago it was installed, but I'm not positive on that one.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking. You guys have gotten all the advantages already. So I don't know what kind of a deal this would be for the individual, but
Well, I also thought I heard, I don't think this is 100% fully baked as a proposal yet, because I thought I heard on the radio, rather than purchase, a potential yearly subscription option. Or maybe that's all in the mix.
Oh, for community
Yeah.
solar, yes, it would be on an annual basis, so, that's really, to, you know, if somebody wants to buy a panel April to September, you know, the idea would be, yeah, to purchase on an annual basis, so you're getting that full spectrum of the year.
Got it. Dr. Davies.
Yeah, I'm just one consideration about the current proposal using the extant system. I agree that I think that we should be actually trying to incentivize new capacity. But the other problem with the current proposal, I think, is that because these panels are older, the economic advantage to people is probably somewhat less, and so it may not be a good gauge of the actual community interest in this.
Yeah, and that was definitely looked at, John, and I can tell you that when we did the comparative between the existing panels, even if they're not as efficient as the newer panels, for how much is still owed on these panels versus buying brand new, it was far less expensive for someone to participate in the existing system than if you built brand new. And prime example is if you look at Chugach's community solar program and what the subscription cost is for that versus what we're proposing.
But the does that take into account the net benefit of it then? I mean, if the panel's cheaper, but it's not producing as much, so what is the bottom line?
Yeah, the bottom line was a lot better with our existing system for now compared to building brand new.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
And I didn't realize that this is something that someone else is doing. Another utility is actually doing this right now.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we are past the top of the hour. Thank you. Again, I don't know. I'm not quite as down on this idea. And I would just remind everybody again, there are multiple organizations, and Solarize Fairbanks is probably the premier, promoting solar, community solar, individual solar installations. So I'm actually kind of pleased that our utility, having a demonstration solar farm already in place, is looking at innovative ways we might use it, and innovative ways that the individual ratepayer might participate. So, okay. Well, all right, everybody. We're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, GVEA. Really great update. You guys covered a whole bunch, so really appreciate it. That's all I got. Wait, there was something. Oh, so the last announcement. Again, right now, FEDC assisting the borough with the SEDS Community Economic Development Strategy update. If you get a reach out, please do participate. I may, in fact, use one of our meetings in the next couple of weeks as recommendations for that update come in, of using this group to go ahead and kind of do the last final scrub, because again, this is a group that has had a long running interest and informed on energy in our community. All right, everybody. Beyond that, just have a great rest of your day. Everybody stay dry, get your shovels out, although it's all supposed to melt by the end of the week. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon at the next Energy for All Alaska Task Force. Again, thanks, Mr. President.
Thank you.